The cargo run that changed everything. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his cargo ship through the purple-tinged atmosphere of planet Nexera. The twin suns cast strange shadows across the alien landscape below, where crystalline spires reached toward the heavens like frozen lightning. This was supposed to be a simple job: deliver medical supplies to the outer colonies and collect his payment. Nothing more, nothing less. The landing bay of Port Valdres buzzed with activity as Jake's ship, the Wanderer, settled onto the designated platform with a soft hiss of hydraulics. Alien beings of various species moved cargo containers while others conducted business in the shadowy corners of the massive structure. Jake had been to dozens of worlds like this one, but something about Nexera felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with ancient energy. After completing his delivery, Jake decided to grab a drink at the local tavern before heading back to space. The Crimson Chalice was exactly what he expected: dimly lit, filled with smoke from the exotic substances, and packed with beings who looked like they'd rather fight than talk. Perfect for a quick, anonymous drink. The bartender, a six-armed creature with orange skin, served him something that glowed faintly blue in the glass. Jake raised it in a casual toast to nobody in particular and took a sip. The liquid burned pleasantly down his throat, tasting of starlight and promises. "That drink you hold," came a voice from behind him, "smooth as silk but sharp as a blade, is sacred to our people." Jake turned to see the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and her violet eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She wore flowing robes of deep blue that seemed to move with a life of their own, and her long white hair was adorned with intricate silver jewelry that caught the tavern's dim light. "I'm sorry," Jake said, setting down the glass. "I didn't know. I just asked for whatever was good." The woman's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "The Nexus flame is reserved for those who prove themselves worthy through combat. By drinking it without earning the right, you have issued a challenge to our greatest champion." The challenge that couldn't be refused. The tavern had gone completely silent. Every eye was fixed on Jake, and he could feel the weight of ancient tradition pressing down on him like a physical force. The silver-skinned woman watched him with those incredible violet eyes, and Jake found himself drowning in their depths. "Look, I'm just a cargo pilot," Jake said, raising his hands. "I don't want any trouble. I'll pay for the drink and be on my way." "It is too late for that," she replied softly. "I am Princess Villara of the House of Starweaving, and you have unknowingly invoked the right of worthiness. My champion, Zefane the Undefeated, must now face you in combat." The crowd parted as footsteps thundered across the tavern floor. Jake's blood ran cold as he saw what approached him. Zefane stood nearly 8 feet tall, his blue-black skin rippling with muscles that looked like they could crush starship hulls. 4 arms extended from his massive torso, each ending in hands that could easily palm Jake's entire head. His eyes burned like twin suns, and when he smiled, Jake saw rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Human," Zefane rumbled, his voice like distant thunder, "you have drunk the sacred flame. Now you must prove yourself worthy or die in the attempt." Jake looked around desperately, but every face he saw was set in stone. This wasn't a request or a negotiation. This was law, as immutable as gravity itself. "Fine," Jake said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his own voice. "But I choose the weapons." Zefane's laugh shook the entire building. "Choose, little human. It matters not what blade you wield when facing the champion of Nexera." The fight for survival, they moved to the courtyard behind the tavern, where torches burned in ancient braziers and the ground was worn smooth by countless duels. Princess Villara took her place on a raised platform, her handmaiden Kestra beside her. The dark-skinned woman with fierce green eyes glared at Jake with obvious hatred as if he had personally insulted her mistress. Jake chose simple plasma swords, weapons he was familiar with from his military days before becoming a cargo pilot. Zephon selected 4 curved blades, one for each of his massive hands, their edges gleaming with deadly promise. "Begin," called out the High Arbiter, an ancient being whose voice carried the weight of centuries. Zephon moved with surprising speed for his size, all 4 blades spinning in deadly arcs that would have reduced a normal man to ribbons in seconds. But Jake wasn't normal. Years of hauling cargo through pirate-infested space had kept his reflexes sharp, and his military training kicked in like muscle memory. He rolled under the first strike, came up inside Zephon's guard, and drove his plasma, laid deep into the champion's side. Blue blood sprayed across the courtyard stones as Zephon roared in pain and fury. The battle was brutal and desperate. Zephon's reach advantage meant Jake had to stay close, dancing inside the cage of flashing blades while looking for openings. The champion's blood made the stones slippery, and more than once Jake nearly lost his footing and his life. But Jake had something Zephon didn't expect: desperation born of survival. He had fought pirates, smugglers, and worse in the dark spaces between stars. When death comes calling, you either fight with everything you have or die trying. The end came suddenly. Zephon, weakened by blood loss, stumbled slightly during a cove. 4-blade attack. Jake saw his chance and took it, his plasma sword cutting through flesh and bone in one clean stroke. The mighty champion fell to the ground in 2 pieces, his life extinguished in an instant. The law that binds silence fell over the courtyard like a shroud. Jake stood over Zephon's body, his chest heaving, his sword still humming with deadly energy. He had won a fight he never wanted, killed a being he had no quarrel with, and now he faced consequences he couldn't even imagine. The High Arbiter stepped forward, his ancient voice carrying across the courtyard. "By the sacred law of Kethmoran, he who defeats the champion claims all that the champion protected. Princess Vilara, and all who serve her house now belong to you, human." Jake's world tilted on its axis. "What? No, I don't want to own anyone. I just wanted a drink." "The law is absolute," the Arbiter continued. "To refuse would bring dishonor upon the princess and all her household. Such dishonor can only be cleansed by death." Jake looked at Princess Vilara, expecting to see anger or fear in those beautiful violet eyes. Instead, he saw something that made his heart race: acceptance mixed with what might have been curiosity. She stepped down from the platform with fluid grace, her handmaiden Kestra following close behind with murder in her green eyes. "I am yours now," Vilara said simply, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. "My life, my honor, and my house are bound to you by law and tradition. This is not a choice. It is destiny." Jake's mind reeled as he tried to process what had just happened. One moment he was a simple cargo pilot having a drink, and the next he was bound by alien law to a princess, whose beauty could stop starships in their tracks. The night air grew cold as Jake realized his life had just changed forever. The stars above seemed to spin in their courses, and somewhere in the distance he could hear the sound of his own destiny calling. Jake's ship had never felt smaller than it did now, with Princess Vilara and her handmaiden Kestra aboard. The Wanderer was built for one person, maybe 2 in a pinch, but now it housed beings whose very presence seemed to change the air itself. Vilara moved through the cramped corridors with ethereal grace, her silver skin catching the ship's lights and casting dancing reflections on the metal walls. Kestra, on the other hand, prowled like a caged predator. Her green eyes never left Jake, and he could feel the hatred radiating from her like heat from a plasma core. Every time he turned around, she was there, watching, waiting for him to make a mistake that would justify her obvious desire to put a blade between his ribs. "This is wrong," Jake muttered as he checked the navigation systems for the third time in an hour. "People aren't property. I don't care what your laws say." Vialara appeared beside him with that unsettling silence she seemed to possess. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns that swirled beneath her silver skin, like living tattoos that shifted with her emotions. Her scent was intoxicating, something between starlight and exotic flowers that existed nowhere in human space. "Your culture values choice above all else," she said, her voice like music played on crystal chimes. "Ours values duty, honor, and the bonds that tie families together across the generations. The law of Kethmorin has protected noble houses for 1,000 years. Protected them from what?" Jake asked, unable to keep the frustration from his voice. Ilara's violet eyes grew distant. "From men like Lord Grimwold." The name fell between them like a stone into still water. Jake saw Kestra stiffen at the mention of it, her hand instinctively moving to the curved blade at her hip. "Who is Lord Grimwold?" Jake asked Dot the Hunter in the shadows. "He is the reason I needed a champion," Vilara said, settling gracefully into the co-pilot's chair. "For 3 years, he has pursued me across the galaxy, claiming that ancient treaties give him the right to my hand in marriage. His armies have conquered 12 worlds, and his fleet grows stronger with each victory." Jake turned to face her fully. "If he's that powerful, why haven't you just, I don't know, called for help? Surely your people have laws against that kind of thing." Kestra snorted from her position by the door. "You understand nothing, human. Lord Grimwald's claim has legal basis. Princess Vilara's father promised her in marriage to seal an alliance, but he died before the ceremony could take place. Now, Grimwald says the debt passes to him as the strongest lord of their allied houses." "That's barbaric," Jake said. "That's politics," Vilara replied with a sad smile. "My only escape was to find a champion strong enough to defeat Grimwald's representative. In combat, Zephan served that purpose for 2 years, keeping me safe under the protection of the right of champions." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "And now that I've killed Zephan, Grimwald will come for me instead." "He will come for us," Vilara corrected. "By law, you are now my protector and husband. Where I go, you go. What threatens me, threatens you." The word husband hit Jake like a plasma blast to the chest. He stood up so quickly that he banged his head on a low-hanging pipe. "Husband? Nobody said anything about marriage." Kestra's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Did you think the law of Kethmorin was merely about ownership? When a champion falls, a victor doesn't just inherit property. He inherits all the bonds, all the responsibilities, and all the enemies that come with them." The growing heat between them days passed in the close confines of the ship as they traveled toward the outer rim, trying to stay ahead of any pursuit. Jake found himself watching Vilara more and more, fascinated by the way she moved, the way she thought, the way her silver skin seemed to glow when she was deep in concentration. She was nothing like the human women he had known. There was an otherworldly quality to her that went beyond her alien beauty. She spoke of things that spanned centuries, as if she had lived through them herself. And sometimes Jake caught her staring at the stars with an expression of such profound longing that it made his chest ache. "Tell me about your world," he said, one evening as they shared a meal in the ship's tiny galley. The food synthesizer had done its best to accommodate Nexaran dietary needs, but the results were questionable at best. "Nexara is a world of crystal cities and floating gardens," Vilara said, her eyes growing soft with memory. "The twin suns cast everything in shades of purple and gold, and at night the aurora dances across 3 moons. My family's palace sits atop the highest spire in the capital, where you can see the entire realm spread out below like a jeweled tapestry." "It sounds beautiful," Jake said. "Do you miss it?" "Every day," she admitted. But I also know I can never return while Grimwald lives. His claim on me is recognized by too many of the noble houses. Even if I could challenge it in the courts, the process would take years, and he would find me long before then. Jake reached across the small table and touched her hand. Her skin was warm and incredibly soft, with a faint luminescence that pulsed gently under his fingers. Maybe we can find another way. The contact sent electricity shooting up his arm. Velara's eyes widened, and for a moment something raw and hungry flashed in their violet depths. Then she pulled her hand away, but not before Jake saw her fingers. "Tremble. The bond between us grows stronger," she whispered. "I can feel it happening, like roots growing deep into soil. Soon it will be impossible to resist." "What bond?" Jake asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. "The Keth Morin is not just a law," Velara explained. "It creates a spiritual connection between the victor and the claimed. Over time, this connection deepens into something that transcends mere duty or protection. It becomes—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Love, but more than love. A joining of souls that cannot be broken." Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. "And if I don't want that?" Pain flashed across Velara's features. "Then you will fight it, and the fighting will drive you mad. I have seen it happen before. Warriors who claimed prizes they did not want, who spent their remaining years in agony as their souls warred against destiny itself." The passion that cannot be denied that night, Jake lay awake in his bunk, listening to the soft sounds of the ship's systems and the even softer sound of Velara's breathing from the compartment next to his. The thin walls did nothing to muffle the connection he felt growing between them, and he found himself imagining what it would be like to hold her, to taste those silver lips, to lose himself in the starlight of her eyes. Not as if summoned by his thoughts, his door slid open with a whisper. Velara stood silhouetted in the doorway, her nightgown flowing around her like liquid moonlight. Her silver skin seemed to glow in the darkness, and her violet eyes held a hunger that made Jake's blood burn. "I cannot sleep," she said simply. "The bond calls to me, and I grow weaker with each passing hour that I resist it." Jake sat up, his mouth suddenly dry. "Velara, I know you feel it too," she continued, stepping into his small quarters. "Your heart races when I am near. Your eyes follow me when you think I am not looking. The connection between us grows stronger with each breath we share." She was right, and they both knew it. Jake had been fighting his attraction to her since the moment he first saw her in the tavern. But here, in the intimate darkness of his quarters, with her silver beauty filling his vision and her intoxicating scent surrounding him, his resistance crumbled like ancient stone. "This is crazy," he whispered, but he was already reaching for her. "Yes," she breathed, moving into his arms. "But some kinds of madness are worth embracing." Their lips met, and Jake felt the universe tilt on its axis. Velara's kiss was like nothing he had ever experienced, electric and sweet, with an underlying wildness that spoke of alien desires and cosmic hungers. Her silver skin was warm and soft under his hands, and when she pressed against him, he could feel the rapid beating of her alien heart. They made love with desperate passion, as if they were trying to forge a connection strong enough to withstand the forces that sought to tear them apart. Velara was fire and starlight in his arms, responding to his touch with gasps and moans that sounded like music from distant worlds. When she cried out his name at the peak of their passion, Jake felt something fundamental shift inside him, as if a piece of himself that had always been missing had finally clicked into place. Afterward, they lay entwined in the narrow bunk, their bodies still humming with shared pleasure. Velara traced patterns on Jake's chest with her fingertips, and each touch sent little sparks of electricity through his nervous system. "Now you understand?" she whispered against his neck. "The Keth Morin is not just law, it is destiny. We are bound now, in body and soul, and nothing in this galaxy can break that bond. Jake tightened his arms around her, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. I'm starting to think I don't want it broken. The enemy approaches their moment of peace was shattered by the ship's proximity alarms. Jake bolted upright, instantly alert, while Valara's eyes widened with fear. Incoming ships, Kestra's voice crackled over the comm system. Multiple contacts, moving fast. The lead vessel is broadcasting a priority signal. Jake and Valara dressed quickly and rushed to the bridge, where Kestra was already monitoring the sensor displays. Her green eyes were grim as she pointed to the tactical screen. 7 ships in attack formation, she reported. The flagship is the Bloodhawk, Lord Grimwald's personal dreadnought. They've found us. Jake's blood ran cold as he stared at the sensor readings. The pursuing ships were massive, bristling with weapons that could reduce the Wanderer to cosmic dust in seconds. His little cargo hauler had no chance in a straight fight. How did they track us? He asked. The bond, Valara said quietly. Grimwald has sorcerers in his service, practitioners of the old magics. They can follow the spiritual connection between. Use like a bloodhound following a scent trail. An incoming transmission request flashed on the communications panel. Jake looked at Valara, who nodded grimly. He opened the channel, and the bridge filled with the image of the most terrifying being Jake had ever seen. Lord Grimwald was tall and imposing, with skin like black leather and eyes that burned like red coals. Scars crisscrossed his face and arms, each one telling a story of battles won and enemies destroyed. When he smiled, Jake saw teeth that had been sharpened to points. Princess Valara, Grimwald said, his voice like gravel grinding against stone. How lovely you look. Marriage will suit you well, I think. I am already bound by the law of Kethmorin, Valara replied, lifting her chin defiantly. This human defeated my champion in honorable combat. I belong to him now. Grimwald's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. A human? This pathetic creature? His burning gaze fixed on Jake. I have killed champions from a dozen worlds, little man. What makes you think you can stand against me? Jake stepped forward, surprising himself with his own courage. Because I have something you'll never understand. I'm fighting for love. Not conquest. Love? Grimwald spat. Love is weakness. Power is the only truth in this universe, and I have more power than you can possibly imagine. Surrender the princess now, and I might let you live long enough to watch me break her spirit. Go. To hell, Jake said, and cut the transmission. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beep of the proximity alarms. Jake looked at the tactical display, calculating odds and distances, trying to find some way out of the trap that was closing around them. There, he said suddenly, pointing to a cluster of asteroids off their starboard bow. If we can reach that field, we might be able to lose them in the rocks. The Wanderer isn't built for that kind of maneuvering, Kestra pointed out. One wrong turn, and we'll be nothing but debris. Then we'd better not make any wrong turns, Jake replied. His hands already dancing over the flight controls dot. The chase was on. The Wanderer screamed through space at maximum burn, her hull groaning. Under the stress of acceleration that would have crushed a human without the ship's gravity compensators. Behind them, Lord Grimwald's fleet pursued like a pack of metallic wolves, their weapons charging for the kill. Jake's hands flew over the controls with desperate precision, threading the needle between massive asteroids that could pulverize his ship with a single collision. Plasma bolts sizzled past the cockpit, turning chunks of ancient rock into glowing vapor that painted the darkness in shades of fire. Port side, Kestra shouted from the weapons station. 2 fighters coming in fast. Jake rolled the ship hard to starboard, feeling the artificial gravity strain against the violent maneuver. One of the enemy fighters, unable to match the cargo hauler's sudden change in direction, slammed into an asteroid with a brilliant flash of destruction. "One down," Jake muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. 6 to go. Velara sat in the navigator's chair, her silver hands dancing over the sensor controls as she tracked their pursuers. The spiritual bond between her and Jake had grown stronger during their night of passion, and now she could feel his emotions as clearly as her own, the determination, the fear, and beneath it all, the fierce protective love that burned in his human heart. "There," she said, pointing to a gap between two massive asteroids. "If we can reach that passage, it leads to the far side of the field. We might be able to break their sensor lock." "Might isn't good enough," Jake replied, but he was already adjusting course toward the gap. The Wanderer dove between the floating mountains of rock, her hull scraping against the rough surfaces as Jake pushed the ship to her. Absolute limits thought the pursuing fighters couldn't follow them into the narrow passage, but Lord Grimwold's dreadnought had other options. The Bloodhawk positioned itself at the far end of the asteroid field and began launching seeker missiles, small, intelligent weapons that could navigate the rocky maze and hunt down their target. "Incoming seekers," Kestra reported. "Multiple contacts, closing fast." Jake's mind raced as he calculated trajectories and distances. The missiles were faster than his ship, more maneuverable, and equipped with sensors that could track them even through the asteroid field's interference. In a straight chase, they were doomed. "Hold on," he said, and did something that went against every instinct he possessed. He killed the engines. The gamble that changed everything, the Wanderer went dark and silent, coasting through space like a dead hulk. Jake had shut down everything, except life support and minimal sensors, gambling that the ship's reduced energy signature would be too faint for the Seeker missiles to detect at close range. They drifted past the Seekers in tense silence, holding their breath as the deadly weapons searched for their prey. The missile sensors swept back and forth like the heads of hunting serpents, passing within meters of the ship's hull before moving on to search elsewhere. "Brilliant," Velara whispered, her violet eyes shining with admiration. "I have never seen a pilot with such instincts." "Just lucky," Jake replied, but he felt a warm glow of pride at her praise. The bond between them carried more than just emotion. He could sense her genuine respect for his skills, her growing confidence in his ability to protect her dot once the Seekers had passed. Jake carefully brought the ship's systems back online and began plotting a course out of the asteroid field. But their victory was short-lived. The Bloodhawk had moved to block their escape route, and Lord Grimwold's voice crackled over the communication system. "Impressive human," the alien lord said, his scarred face filling the main screen. "But your tricks will not save you forever. I grow tired of this chase. Surrender now, and I will grant you a warrior's death. Continue to defy me, and I will make you watch as I slowly break every bone in the princess's body." Jake felt Velara shudder beside him, and a red rage filled his vision. The bond between them carried her fear directly into his heart, and with it came a fury unlike anything he had ever experienced. This monster had terrorized the woman he loved for years, hunting her across the galaxy like an animal, and now he threatened to torture her. "You want her?" Jake said, his voice deadly quiet. "Come and take her." He punched the engines to full power and aimed the ship directly at the massive dreadnought dot, the Clash of Champions. "What are you doing?" Kestra demanded, her green eyes wide with shock. "Something stupid," Jake replied. "But sometimes stupid is the only option left." The Wanderer raced toward the Bloodhawk at full speed, looking like an insect challenging a dragon. Grimwold's ship opened fire with everything it had: plasma cannons, particle beams, and missile launchers filling space with deadly energy. Jake flew like a man possessed, weaving between the incoming fire with reflexes enhanced by desperation and love. The bond with Velara seemed to slow time itself, allowing him to anticipate attacks before they were even fired. Energy bolts that should have vaporized his ship missed by inches, and missiles that should have found their target exploded harmlessly. Against asteroid debris dot, at the last possible second, Jake rolled the ship and skimmed along the dreadnought's hull, using the larger vessel's own bulk to shield them from its weapons. Kestra, finally understanding his plan, fired the ship's single plasma cannon at a sensor cluster, temporarily blinding one of the Bloodhawk's targeting systems. "The docking bay," Velara said suddenly. "If we can get inside, we can challenge him under the old laws. Single combat, champion against champion." "That's suicide," Kestra protested. "You've seen what Grimwold can do. He's killed dozens of warriors stronger than us." "Maybe," Jake said, guiding the ship toward the dreadnought's open landing bay. "But I've got something he doesn't." "What?" Velara asked. Jake looked at her, and in that moment, she could see everything in his eyes, the love, the determination, the absolute certainty that he would die before letting anyone hurt her. "I've got you," he said simply. The final battle, the Wanderer, landed in the Bloodhawk's cavernous docking bay, surrounded by armed warriors who kept their weapons trained on the ship but did not fire. Ancient law was absolute among Grimwold's people. A challenge issued and accepted must be settled in honorable combat. Jake, Velara, and Kestra walked down the ship's ramp to find Lord Grimwold waiting for them in the center of a circle marked out on the deck plates. The alien lord had removed his armor, revealing a body that was all scars and corded muscle. In his hands he held two curved blades that gleamed with an inner light. "So," Grimwold said, his voice echoing in the vast space, "the human wishes to die like a warrior after all. I respect that, even if I do not respect you." Jake drew his plasma sword, the weapon humming to life in his hands. Around them, Grimwold's crew formed a circle, their faces eager for the blood that was about to be spilled. "The terms are simple," Grimwold continued. "We fight until one of us is dead. If you win, my fleet will withdraw, and I will never pursue the princess again. If I win," he smiled, showing those sharpened teeth, "well, you will not be alive to care what happens next." The battle began without warning. Grimwold moved like liquid lightning, his twin blades spinning in complex patterns that would have reduced most opponents to ribbons in seconds. But Jake had learned from his fight with Zephan, and more importantly, he had learned from his connection with Velara. The bond between them flowed with power now, enhancing his reflexes and filling him with strength beyond anything merely human. He could feel Velara's love like a fire in his chest, her absolute faith in him like armor around his heart. Grimwold was skilled, ruthless, and experienced. But Jake was fighting for something the alien lord had never understood: true love freely given and returned. Every time Grimwold's blades came close to finding their mark, Jake thought of Velara's silver skin and violet eyes, of the way she had trembled in his arms, of the life they could build together if he could just survive the next few seconds. The fight raged across the docking bay, sparks flying as plasma met enchanted steel. Grimwold was stronger and more experienced, but Jake was faster and more desperate. When the alien lord's guard dropped for just an instant, Jake struck with everything he had. His plasma blade took Grimwold through the heart, the superheated energy cauterizing the wound instantly. The alien lord's eyes widened in shock, then glazed over as he fell to the deck with a crash that echoed through the silent bay. The new. Beginning, the crew of the Bloodhawk knelt as one, acknowledging Jake's victory and his right to claim their allegiance. But Jake had no interest in building an empire. He had won what he came for, and that was enough. Go, he told them. Find new lives, new purposes. The old ways of conquest and domination end here. 3 months later, the Wanderer sat in the yaw. docking bay of a small frontier station, her hull gleaming with fresh repairs and upgrades. Jake stood in the cargo hold, watching as Velara directed the loading of supplies for their next journey. Her silver skin glowed with an inner light that seemed brighter than ever, and when she caught him looking, her smile could have powered a starship's engines. "Where to next?" she asked, moving into his arms with that fluid grace he would never tire of watching. "Wherever you want to go," Jake replied, holding her close. "We've got the whole galaxy ahead of us." Kestra appeared in the doorway, her green eyes still suspicious, but no longer actively hostile. In the months since Grimwald's death, she had slowly come to accept that Jake truly loved her mistress, and would die before allowing harm to come to her. "The cargo manifest is complete," she reported. "Medical supplies to Trellis Prime, agricultural, equipment to New Avalon, and a sealed container bound for the Outer Rim." The usual, Jake agreed. But nothing about his life was usual anymore. He had a wife who could literally glow in the dark, a sister-in-law who could kill him 6 different ways with a dinner fork, and a future that stretched out before them like an uncharted star map. The bond between him and Velara had evolved beyond mere spiritual connection. They were truly partners now, sharing thoughts and emotions as easily as breathing. When she laughed, he felt joy bubbling up from his very soul. When she was sad, his heart ached in sympathy. And when they made love, it was like touching the fundamental forces that held the universe together. As the Wanderer lifted off from the station and turned toward the stars, Jake reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. A simple cargo. Run had led him to love, adventure, and a future he never could have imagined. Regrets? Velara asked, sensing his contemplative mood through their bond. Jake looked at her, at the way the starlight caught in her silver hair, at the warmth and intelligence in her violet eyes, at the promise of all the tomorrows they would share together. "Not a single one," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The stars called to them, and together they answered.